Welcome to the TFI Network Plus launch event. We have several people still joining. We have a large number of people registered for the event today, so I suspect this will keep going for a while. You can see the agenda in front of you. It's an event where we're going to give a taster, I think, of some of the issues and some of the potential solutions that we'll be seeking throughout the lifetime of the TFI Network Plus and beyond. So we've organized 6 speakers from the various sectors in the foundation industries, and you'll be hearing those as we go through the program today. Also, we have Bruce Adler speaking from the Transforming Foundation Industries Challenge Fund. He's the Challenge Director, of course, you know him very well. And ultimately, we'll be having a Q&A session at the end, which is going to be led by the Deputy Chair of the TFI Network Plus, which is Susan Bernal-Lopez. I forgot to introduce myself as usual. I'm Professor Reaney. I'm the PI of this particular grant, and I'm at the University of Sheffield, and I'm also the Dyson Chair in Ceramics, which is Dyson Refractories, just so in case you're wondering. A very old company that's been around many, many years, and I'm an endowed chair with that title. Right, seem to have lost the
No, I just took it off just for a moment. I'll just wait for people to join. There's still quite a few people joining. So. Do you want it back on?
Please, yes, Neil, thank you. So, yes, I think we were having quite a few people join, so maybe I should wait a little bit longer as people click in. Which is quite a lot on this particular video link today. Okay, it's quieting down a little in terms of people joining. So I think we, in the interest of time, I think we should continue. So I'll be giving an introduction to the Network Plus and its remit. We'll have some few words from the IAP chair as we move through. And Chris McDonald, who's the CEO of Materials Processing Institute. As I said previously, we have a sequence of speakers who are going to talk about the issues facing the foundation industries. We are going to deal with them by sector, this particular launch, but in the future, we'll be having workshops around specific agenda items that are going to be cropping up routinely in the Transforming Foundation Industries area. Key topics such as energy, efficiency, thermal management, and things like that will be parts of our program as we move through, rather than dealing things sector by sector. This is a taster event just to discuss and present some of the challenges that each sector is currently facing. I think we can move on to the next slide, Neil. Okay, so the TFI Network Plus is a £2 million grant awarded by EPSRC. It's led by myself. I'm the PI, Professor Reaney, as I said, and there are 3 other universities involved other than the University of Sheffield. Those are Manchester, Swansea, and Leeds. Next slide, please. Our vision: to engage with academia, industry, policymakers, non-governmental organizations to identify and address the challenges and opportunities that for transformation within the foundation industries. It's a big ask. We understand how difficult that is going to be, but just because it's difficult doesn't mean we shouldn't attempt it and try to make a success of it. It is going to be difficult, but if we all work together, we can achieve quite significant success as we move through. There are several questions appearing as we move through, and I think if Neil could answer some of those technical questions to help people who are struggling to connect. It's the network part of it I described above, which is all about engagement with the various sectors and the policymakers and NGOs involved in the foundation industries. But the plus part of the whole concept comes from the idea that we have a fund to support mini projects as we move through the 3 years of the program, and those mini projects will be announced, or calls for the mini projects will be announced at periodic times as we progress through the program and the schedule of events that we have in our mind for the Network Plus. Next slide, please. So the team, as I said, myself, PI, Professor Reaney, and you can see the others. We have Susan, Bernal Lopez, William Sampson, Cameron Pleidel-Pierce from the University of Leeds, Manchester, and Swansea, respectively. Could you just unmute yourselves and introduce yourselves, guys? Susan first in order, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Susan Bernal. I'm Professor of Structural Materials in the School of Civil Engineering at the University of Leeds.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bill Sampson. I'm a professor in the Department of Materials at the University of Manchester. I work in all sorts of materials, heterogeneous systems, but I have a strong background in paper science and working with the paper industry.
Hi everyone, Cameron Pleidel-Pierce, Deputy Director of the Sustain Future Manufacturing Hub for steel, metallurgist by trade, and looking to engage not just the steel industry, of course, but the wider metals community and advocate on behalf of the wider metals community in the UK in the context of the Network Plus.
Thank you. Chris will introduce himself a little bit later in his own personal slot. Just to reinforce, I'm the PI, and my main area is ceramics, but I do cover to some extent glass. The administrative team who you'll be liaising with as you contact us is going to be Neil Lowry, who you've heard already. He's the network manager, and Deborah Froggatt. Hi, it's gone a bit haywire. And Deborah Froggatt, who is the marketing officer for the Network Plus. Neil, I'm only seeing half of the PowerPoints at the moment. Could you? Thank you.
Okay, I'll replace it. Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I'm hoping that as we move through, there's some questions that my colleagues can answer, and I will be able to answer when I stop speaking later, some of the questions that are popping up. Many of these will be dealt with in the Q&A sessions and as we move through, and in part will be dealt with as I move through my part of the presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, so I alluded earlier to some of the themes that we'll be doing. Today, we're going to split things up by sector, but that's not the intent as we move through. We'll be dealing with themes that we think are not necessarily common to all sectors, but certainly appear in many of the individual sectors and can be dealt with synergistically. Concepts such as energy efficiency in manufacturing, circular economy. We will be linking to the circular economy hubs that have just been announced as well on this issue. Next generation processes, manufacturing informatics, supply chain resilience, equality, diversity, inclusion is a major part of what we intend to pursue as a policy within our Network Plus, and we'd also be looking at methods by which we can enhance working practices. There are a number of workshops which will deal with several of these topics, which will be coming up. We'll be announcing the first one at the end of this session today, this launch event today. But I think, judging by the questions that have been coming through, the majority of you seem to be quite interested in our fund, our mini project fund. and I think should discuss that a little bit. So I'll move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so we'll call it the flexible fund, and there's been several questions already popping up. Currently, based on the EPSSE allocation that we've had, we have about £1.45 million to be allocated on a competitive basis for small projects that can run up to 12 months. We'll have 5 calls, I think it's 5 calls, to deliver 20 or so projects based on the 1.45 million. We may be able to expand that to more projects if there is some match funding coming from industry in order to create either new projects or longer projects. And that is something we're aiming to do, but we understand very much that circumstances are very, very different to perhaps when the TFI concept was first discussed and started many, many, many years ago now. So we understand that CV19 has changed a lot of what we might expect to get in terms of match funding. So we're very cognizant of that. The idea is that there will be access through academics based at universities. This is EPSSE funding, so the monies will be bid for by academics, but it will provide access within those academics, but through those academics, to equipment, facilities, and expertise. We're expecting there to be co-created projects with industry coming from the academics. That's the anticipation, and those co-created projects will form the basis of proposals which will get reviewed, and our primary motivation for funding is going to be quality, so that we hope to get to the point where the best projects get funded. That's our primary motivation. There will be themes to the calls as we move through, and we can discuss what those themes are going to be a little bit later. We are, of course, a little bit restricted in terms of the time in laboratories at the moment because of CV19, and that may affect the running of the calls that we do in terms of the themes. We have set aside 300,000 of monies to go towards early career researchers. There's 2 reasons for this. One is to encourage early career researchers, such as postdocs, to engage with research funding applications. That's a really good thing for their career. But if you're going to get young people to engage with the foundation industries and get the talented young people to move into the foundation industries, having them do mini projects in this area, which they can get for their own funds, have their own funds, is a fantastic way of doing it. So if we can get early career researchers engaged, they're the people who will go out and be the bedrock of the industries out there in the future. Okay, I think that may be the end of my part of the presentation today. Yes, thank you very much. And we have a few words initially from our chair of the Independent Advisory Panel, which is effectively our industrial advisory panel, but then we also have non-NGOs and RTOs. So if I can pass over to Chris, could you unmute yourself and just introduce yourself, Chris? Hi.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yep.
Thank you. I was scared you'd gone making a cup of tea of something.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was just waiting for the little symbol to pop up. Okay, so welcome everyone. So as Ian said, I'm Chris MacDonald, and I'm the Chief Executive at the Materials Processing Institute. But more to the point here, I'm the chair of the Industrial Advisory Panel for the Network Plus. I don't know if others like I were listening to the Today programme this morning. If you were, you might have heard Bill Gates talking about decarbonisation as being the biggest challenge ever in human history. And he mentioned specifically the real difficulty in decarbonising industries such as cement, chemicals and steel. And of course, that's what we're here to do as part of the Network Plus and through the foundation industries more generally. So I'd say, you know, the important thing is for us all really not to underestimate the severity of the challenge that we're trying to tackle here and how important this is for our own industries, for the UK, and actually for the solutions that we'll come up with globally as well. I mean, you can see from the agenda today that the UK's foundation industries are strongly committed to working together as part of this Network Plus and to meeting this challenge for decarbonisation. And what we will see over the coming period is that the Foundation Industries Network Plus will act as a catalyst to help those industries to come together and to find common solutions. So I'd like to thank Ian and his colleagues for organising this launch session with such a strong agenda for the day. And I hope that everybody will enjoy participating, forming some new connections, and then looking forward to working with you all in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. I echo Chris's words. This isn't about the management committee. This is about you guys out there. This is an outward-facing network where we want to encourage collaboration amongst yourselves, with us, with academics. The management committee cannot bid for funds. Everybody else can, the strategic advisory committee and so on and so forth, but the management committee are forbidden for funds. So we are there to help you guys as much as we possibly can, get mini projects, collaborate with other people within the foundation industries area. So it's all about you, not about the PIs and the co-Is and so on. So on that note, I think I would like to pass over to our next speaker, which is Laura, I believe, who is from the British Ceramics Confederation. Laura, are you there? Laura?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, lovely.
Right.
Thank you, Laura. You're scaring me there.
Okay, so do I need to share video? Yes, right. Hopefully, can you see me now or not? Yes. Right, I'm Laura Cohen. I'm Chief Exec of the British Ceramic Confederation, which is the trade association for ceramic manufacturers. But also, I am a Royal Academy of Engineering visiting professor at Manchester University Department of Materials and the Henry Royce Institute, which of course includes Sheffield and 6 other universities as well. I also co-chair UKRI's Transforming Foundation Industries Advisory Group, which oversees this Network Plus and indeed all the other projects going on. So I'm going to cover 2 areas. My presentation is a bit different from the other sectors. I'm going to just put the foundation industry business context and then talk about the 3 technological challenges, the main 3 ones we're looking at, both how do I see this from across industry, and my last slide will be on the ceramic sector focus. So the next slide, please, Neil. A reminder of the 6 foundation industries. There was steel on that slide as well. I think some, oh yeah, it is there. Okay, but just the background, we have 3 quite important existential threats, or you could call them challenges and opportunities. First of all, we are really struggling, many of our businesses, with COVID. For some of us, it was about survival, but it's also about how we're going to recover. The second existential challenge is Brexit, with many of us exporting overseas and working out what we need to do differently to do that. But also, and this is certainly for ceramics, our biggest export market by far and away, but also some of the other regulatory changes. And the third existential challenge is net zero. Yes, this is longer term, but we have to work on it. We are all energy intensive sectors. So our role on the advisory group is very much, and when I co-chair those meetings, it's very much about ensuring that that broader business context is understood, that all the 6 sectors are represented on that advisory group, and some universities and some technology providers and BEIS, because they need to understand what we as industry are facing, and UKRI. Now, for some sectors, including ceramics, it's the most significant innovation fund for us on our journey to net zero, because we don't have any sites on things like the carbon capture, use and storage, or the hydrogen cluster sites being funded by government. This is really most of what we've got for decarbonising. Now, for all sizes of company, it's really important that they're reached by these funds, and that includes SMEs. So, for example, in our sector, 3/4 of our member companies are SMEs. Now, I put this in a different color because it's so important. One thing that I always think about is it's important that the biggest sectoral energy and resource efficiency challenges need addressing by this fund. So this shouldn't just be about some nice peripheral esoteric pet projects from academics. It's really focusing on what are the biggest energy efficiency and resource efficiency needs. And we're also working very hard to make sure there are mechanisms in place for cross sector working. The feedback, we are looking continually at why aren't some sectors applying, why aren't some companies applying for this? Let's address the problems in future rounds of funding. So the next slide, please, Neil. So the key things that we're focusing on now for the main part of the fund, ideally, well, more than one foundation industry really needs to benefit from the project. Although for Network Plus, I understand that Ian and his colleagues will encourage cross-sector proposals, but they certainly won't exclude very high quality single sector applications as well. But we really do want to get some cross-sector benefit from them. There are 3 key themes that have been identified: heat recovery, census control and digitalization, and waste utilization and symbiosis. So do have those at the back of your minds as you listen to the next presentations, as each sector sets out what they really want to focus on. Now, some sectors may want to focus on 1 or 2 of these challenge areas, others all 3. Now for ceramics, I'm going to talk mainly about the first 2. So this is my last slide, and that's what we want in ceramics. Could I have the next slide, please, Neil? Thank you. So I'm going to focus on the heat recovery and the digitalization in particular. Now, many of you may think, what are ceramics? Many of you may think of mugs and things like that. This one is actually it's a specialist catering ware ceramic made out of an alumina formulation that is particularly tough, that can get chucked around restaurants and hotels and so on, and put in dishwashers and so on. But we also have in our membership construction materials. So top left of the screen, this is a brickworks, a state-of-the-art energy efficient brickworks. It's over 100 meters long. It's firing at 1100 degrees centigrade, and all along the top here you can see these series of thermocouples. There is heat recovery, taking off waste heat on the cooling down part of the cycle, which is then feeding back to the dryer, which is also 100 meters long and a few meters away. We have other construction materials like roof tiles, clay drainage pipes, loos, wall and floor tiles. We also have in our membership refractories. Ian mentioned that he's sponsored by Dyson, which is a refractory company, linings for high temperature processes. So that's something that all foundation industries use. And also we have technical ceramics in our membership. That includes materials for planes, cars, computers, medical ceramics, and so on. So what are the challenges? 2 I'd like you to focus on, and this has come out from meetings with our members. First of all, durable low-cost heat exchangers for kiln exhaust. We're always looking to recover even more heat. So at the moment we recycle from the cooling side. That's because when you heat up, it can be quite wet and acidic. How can we use that wet acidic heat as well? How can we use it at low cost? How can, bottom left, demonstration perhaps of heat pipe heat exchangers. We know these sorts of things have been going on in some other foundation industries. I remember over 20 years ago when I was working in the chemical and pharmaceutical industry, we were using all sorts of interesting and nominally quite expensive materials, but when you started looking at the cost in service, it was quite practical to do so. On the digitalization side, we want to improve energy efficiency and resource efficiency. We don't want to chuck out fired rejects because those have quite a lot of embodied energy in them. So we're very keen to look at digitalization improvements to improve our efficiency. So that, if I just give some examples to bring it to life, I've seen in loo factories and tableware factories, as people are rejecting things that aren't perfect, they're perhaps clicking a screen, and that is linking through to do some statistics on it, and people look at that at the end of the shift. How can you improve that, react more quickly, and stop the rejects happening in the first place? At this tile factory, for example, there's a lot of real-time monitoring and chucking out of rejects and classifying them. How do you use that to feed back to the process to monitor it in real time? So I hope I've given you a bit of a flavour for some of the ideas that our members are keen to explore, and we look forward to working with academics to develop these projects that can add some real value. If you want to find more about the ceramic project, my colleague John Flitney is on this call, and I've got his email address here, so do get in touch with John. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Laura, for that fantastic overview of the challenges in the ceramic sector and some of the solutions that are in play at the moment. It's always wonderful to see how things are moving forward. We have little time for questions. We're already overrunning. And if you have any questions directly for Laura, you can perhaps email her or ask in the chat room, and she can perhaps respond. So thank you, Laura, once again. We're going to move on now, and our next speaker, as I said, this is a taster of the issues that are currently occupying our minds within the foundation sectors. And so we're going to move on to the paper industry, where we have a presentation from Andrew Large of the Confederation of Paper Industries. I feel a little bit like the Eurovision Song Contest today. I can see you, Andrew. Thank you very much. You're definitely there today. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to you. Andrew?
Andrew, I can see that you're unmuted, so it could be a problem with your microphone.
Is that any better?
That's marvelous, Andrew.
Oh, there we go. So
you.
it was, I did make a joke, but obviously you couldn't hear me about not getting null point. So it clearly sounds like I have got null point, but no matter. Yes, if you could move me on to the next slide, please, Neil, I'd be grateful. I wanted to term my presentation today Unfolding the Future, because here in the paper industry, we feel very much that we have opportunities to really play our role as one of the primary materials of the 21st century. And really what I'd like to do today, if I could come on to the next slide, Neil, is I guess to break things into two parts. The first is to look at where we've come from as an industry, what have we achieved in areas like decarbonisation, product design and promotion of the circular economy, and then to look at what's going forward. So what are the benefits that we see from networking? What are the barriers to innovation in our sector in paper? And where do we see the potential solutions coming from? So as to be able to meet those challenges. So next slide, please, Neil. Thank you. So this is a slide. It covers fossil fuel carbon dioxide emissions for paper making. Slightly gone out of format on the screen, but what you can see is that we started in 1990 with 6.6 million tons of carbon dioxide emitted every year in the paper sector, and we are now down in 2019 to 2 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions from paper making. So that is a 70% drop in the 30 or so year period that is covered by this graph. And This is a story of achievement which is based on improved energy efficiency within plants, and it's also the story of the rise of CHP plants on site, both biomass and natural gas, replacing very more carbon intensive coal, oil, and other power and heat sources. So this is, a snapshot of how we as a sector have reduced our carbon dioxide emissions over the last 30 years. Next slide, please. So again, one of the other areas that we've looked at is the area of product design. We recently published these paper and board packaging recyclability guidelines. This was design guidance for the next generation of packaging. Clearly promoting the circular economy is a way in which we can improve the decarbonisation and also the resource efficiency performance of the industry. So we're looking at reducing the amount of plastics to 5% or lower if possible, particularly on sophisticated laminated products, the coffee cups, the sandwich packs, and so on. And we're looking across the full range of laminations, coatings, inks, foils, and so on, to help designers understand the recyclability implications of what they're doing in the packaging that they're producing. It's worthwhile looking at the pie chart on the bottom right. You can see the little orange wedge that is sticking out. You will notice, therefore, that there are only 2% of packages that are already more challenging to recycle. And what we're trying to do is to work away at that 2% to make it as small as possible. Next slide, please. And you can see from this slide, the red line is probably the most important line on this particular chart. You can see that our recycling rate has improved greatly into the high 60%. But over the last 6 or 7 years, there has been a flattening out of the progress that's been made. And what we are wanting to do is to look at the next steps forward on packaging recycling, so as and other recycling, so as to make sure that we continue the progress and we drive the recycling rate as high as possible. So next slide, please. Thank you. One of the key messages I wanted to make now as I move into the second half of this process is about the importance of the collective approach and why we are so keen to be part of this TFI Network Plus. It is absolutely the case that across the sectors we have analogous experiences and we can learn from the collective. Whether it's in energy efficiency, whether it's in heat, whether it's in management processes, as Laura referred to earlier on, digitization, optimizing process control, and so on. We all have analogous experiences, and we can all learn from the collective. But the other important point about being together is we need to tell a great story about the contribution of the foundation industries to the UK sustainability future. There are still too many people who look at the foundation industries and say they are industries of the past. They're associated with smokestacks, with pollution, and with previous economic models. And that simply isn't true. And we need to work together collectively to show how the steel we produce, the ceramics we produce, the chemicals, the paper, so the cements, the bricks, etc., will all be part of building the UK sustainable future. We will need that investment if we are going to deliver on net zero. And I would just like to flag at this point the role of a group called the Energy Intensive Users Group. I have the privilege to chair that group, although my term of office finishes this September. This is a policy group which brings together the major foundation sectors to push government on energy intensive industry policy issues. And I see us very much working together and alongside TFI Network Plus, because we can have conversations about the policy issues that we want to raise, and the TFI Network Plus can look at the technical responses to some of these policy issues, and I can see very much that they will be both contributing to the great story that we need to tell about what foundation industries can deliver to the UK in the 21st century. So moving forward onto the next slide, please. Looking at the barrier to innovation as I see them, I think the first issue is, one of the barriers is, what is the role of foundation industries in the economy and society? Showing people that the growth and the sustainability of the economy actually takes place outside the M25 and not just inside it. That the UK is not just a wholly service industry economy. We have a very strong manufacturing sector, and that manufacturing sector is going to drive our ability to move to net zero as quickly as possible. I think we need to keep focusing on the uncompetitive energy costs that we have here in the UK, and the carbon leakage that takes place, the investment that takes place outside the UK in manufacturing, which we then import. We need government to be setting its stall out quickly that is a process that it wants to reverse. I think specifically for paper, one of the challenges we have is who owns the businesses in the UK. We are very much comprised of branch plants of global and European multinationals. So the decision making on investments in low carbon technology take place in Stockholm and Helsinki and Frankfurt and Munich and so on. They do not take place necessarily within the UK. And we need to couple that with the availability of investment funds so that we are able to turn the ideas into businesses and to bring together the position of business and the position of government to be able to support the development of new industrial opportunities here in the UK. Because it's only by getting those two sides of the coin working together that we're actually going to be able to deliver what we need. Next slide, please. So in terms of the potential solutions, I'd like to offer these 5. The foundation industries really must work together, and I completely commend the TFI Network Plus as a major opportunity to drive that collaboration further. I think from my point of view, if there are any opportunities in Brexit, it is one of them is to review our long-term decarbonisation strategy in the UK and what the incentives are for UK industry. And I think these need to be threefold. We need to match the investment levels of our near competitors. It's very instructive that the European Union has just agreed the 1.85 trillion euro package between the Green New Deal and the COVID recovery. And I do think that in the UK, we need government to commit to something of the order of £300 billion between now and 2050, so as to be able to match those investments that are already going to be made in the European continent, as it were. Because we need to make the UK, the location where decarbonisation investment brings the best returns, so that we win the in-company competition for resources. It's become very apparent to me that when investment decisions are being taken in companies, they're being taken not just on different things that will be done in the United Kingdom, but they're being taken across a whole range of geographical locations, European Union, UK, United States, and elsewhere. And companies are taking a global view of where their capital allocation brings the best returns. And we need to make sure that the UK is the location where those decarbonisation investments do bring the best returns, so that our companies are winning the in-company competition from resources against their sister factories in the European Union, in the United States, or wherever. And I think finally, we need to leverage the government, business and university relationship. We need to be better in the UK than we have been in the past in taking those innovations that start as theoretical concepts within universities and applying business and government together to make sure that we can scale those up and turn them, take them out of the laboratory and actually get them implemented into the manufacturing businesses that will be part of the supplying future across the UK as a whole. So with that, thank you, Ian. I'll just conclude there with the last slide. CPI as an organisation and myself personally, we're delighted to be part of the TFI Network Plus. We're looking forward to engaging in it. We think there's a huge opportunity for the foundation industries and paper in particular, and we're really full steam ahead to want to take the wood. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for that overview. That was wonderful. We're very happy to have you as part of the Network Plus, by the way. We anticipate you'll be a wonderful collaborator in the future. So now we're going to move over to a talk from Justin Parry, Professor of Chemistry and Director of Enterprise and Engagement at Northumbria University. He's going to give us a talk called Chemical Research and Innovation Across Boundaries. Justin, I can see an icon. Are you ready?
I am. Hello.
Thank you very much. That's at your leisure.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So my talk today is a bit more sort of at the functional level than previous ones. It's not so much about policy. What I thought I'd talk about today, with my hat on as a professor of chemistry and someone who does a lot of work interfacing between industry and academia, is talk a little bit about collaboration across boundaries. So next slide, please. Okay, so I think this Network Plus is a great opportunity for not only the individual foundation industries to work towards all these targets we're hearing about, but for them to work together. And I haven't seen a Venn diagram yet, but I thought it was time to throw one in. So there's a Venn diagram showing how possibly, well, I believe there will be very strong overlaps of interest and potential technology between the different sectors. Next slide, please. But I think in terms of collaboration, the other sort of overlap that's going to be required to make this Network Plus work is the collaboration when it comes to building a team of people to get a scientific or engineering tasks done. And there's very many different types of people that are needed within such a collaboration that this network here is offering, both as funded or as a way of meeting groups to come together to get funding. So, industries at all different scales, utilities, the supply chain, universities providing expertise or IP, and there are many other things that can go under that other banner, as we shall see. So I thought what I'd do is I'd just lay out 3 different ways that, in my experience, collaborations have come together amongst these different players, which might be a good model for how this sort of might work in the Network Plus, and with some ideas of sort of current topics within the chemical industry at the same time. Okay, next slide, please. So one of the big things in the chemical industry at all scales is bringing biotechnology into the chemical industry. Lots of the classic chemical processes are developing a biotechnological route. And this one is one that I was involved with. The gentleman there with the rubber gloves on, David Randall from what was Chemoxy, is now part of Sequens, had spotted that this compound on the left there, 2-methylglyturonitrile, was something that the polymer industry were making at a large scale and had as a waste product and had no use for whatsoever. It was completely without value. But he spotted that actually, if you could get the chemistry right, you could make it into the coalescing agent on the right-hand side, which would be a valuable thing that people would pay for to put into paints and coatings. So what effectively had to happen is he had to find a way to convert the methylglyturonitrile to the 2-methylglutaric acid. It's a very straightforward piece of chemistry. You can use extremes of pH to do it, but the problem with doing it that way is it's not very well. It's difficult to do it in a cost-effective way because the cost of dealing with the excessive pH just makes it uneconomic. So David had spotted a few of us talking about biocatalysis, the use of enzymes, and in fact at scale, acrylic acid manufacture and acrylamide manufacturer uses enzymes. So he thought perhaps there'd be an enzymatic solution to this. So he pulled together a big group of people to use Innovate UK funding, first of all feasibility study funding and then CR&D funding, to look at this. So next slide, please. Okay, so what happened was Northumbria, one of my hats is making enzymes, using enzymes in chemistry. I was working with a molecular biologist. He went away and looked at the databases online. We made a very large number of enzymes and tested them out against that particular starting material, found a few that worked. We developed a colored screen to make sure we knew how well they worked. And eventually we worked out how to make it work on a milliliter scale. Then we decided to take the best ones and we do them on a liter scale. That's the sort of thing that we do within the university. So those are university equipment there. But to make the next scale up, you're moving away from what most universities could do. So we needed to get a couple of partners to work on this. So we had to buy catalysts to an enzyme supply people, because you're going to be moving from making milligrams of catalysts to making kilograms of catalysts if this is going to work okay. And then we also needed somebody to tell us how to do the chemical engineering, because we're chemists, we're not chemical engineers. So CPI, the Centre for Process Innovation, were the people who could take what we did and scale it up. And so it went from 1 litre to 50 litres at CPI, and they worked on it, worked very well, 90% purity it's at CPI, and then Chemoxy, or Sequenz as it is now, we're able to take that sample, do the final little tweak and make a sample that went out into the paint industry to check. So 8 months from a sequence in a database online, which was completely unused, to a sample going into industry. So that's quite nice. So the thing about that is there's a whole set of people there, universities, SMEs, catapult centers, and the company over and above, pulling together some new technology this company had never used enzymes on any scale at all. This is how you can get it to work. Sometimes you can pull together all sorts of people. Next slide. So an alternative way of doing it is for the industry to actually find the academic, and this is one also from my university. So a local company, Sterling Pharma, a pharmaceutical company, were very keen to do some bromination on one of their compounds, and they are very keen to move into photochemistry because that's very energy efficient and it doesn't have a lot of side products, photons being photons, but it does need some quite careful radical initiation, and the best way to do that is in flow. So instead of having batch processing, using flow processing. So those are two big issues in terms of chemistry at the moment: flow chemistry and sort of more effective use of energy by doing it in flow rather than batch. So they looked through the literature and they found my colleague John Knowles, a new lecturer, just started with us, and said to him, could we're very interested in what you've done in terms of flow photochemistry, can you do something for us? And in the consultancy contract, they came to us, and John and one of the postdocs, a postdoc to work for me, built that thing in the middle there. Yes, it is a plastic crate on its side with some stuff in it, and some quite interesting electronics which ran the high pressure lamp in there, but it worked. We measured the purity of what we did at 98%, and the company worked out that the purity was 99%, so everyone was happy with that. So then it was a case of tech transferring it over to Sterling. So Sterling now have that rather more shiny box over in the corner, lots of stainless steel, and it now works in their process, doing this flow photochemistry bromination very, very well. I'm sure they're getting exactly the same yields we did. And that whole process from initial consultation through to it being tech transferred to them took 6 weeks. So sometimes it can be a case of you go to an academic, talk to them, and then it can be a case of them moving the technique over to you, and that can be very, very effective indeed. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Can you see, this is the one that says waste from one sector? It's in front of me.
Oh, I seem to have. Mine just says new technology. It's still on the photochemistry slide.
Oh, is it? Oh. There must be a glitch because I can see it okay, unless anybody else cannot see it.
I can see it.
Right, must be my computer.
Yeah,
Right.
I think you may be
Okay, well, I
frozen.
can talk because I wrote the slides. I know what's on them. So on this slide, there's another colleague of mine, Matt Unthank, and myself and Matt are quite interested in the sort of waste outputs of chemical industries, because we think, you know, quite a lot of this there's potential for, and one of the big chemical process industries is obviously the polymer industry, the plastics industry. So we've looked at a range of different plastics to see what happens to them after use. Matt came to us from an experience in polymer coatings, so we know quite a lot about plastics. In terms of what we can do, we have a situation where we went out and we talked to industry about what sort of waste they had, and we actually talked to this company called J-Plas. We went down to J-Plas in the Midlands, and we do like a good factory, so we had a good chat and saw what they had to offer. And they showed us that in the middle there you've got a picture of some plastic, and that's basically chopped up bottles, and they call it what's it called? I haven't got this in front of me. So that plastic bottle waste there is, they have various grades of it, but the stuff that you see there is the stuff that they have no use for. Okay, they take all the plastic bottles and chop it up, but once it's got bits of like cap in it, or that or the colored stuff, then suddenly it doesn't have any use for anything else. So what you've got there is you've got a situation. Ah, here we go, it's arrived. PET mixed plastic flake is what it's called. So that effectively is something which can either be sent to landfill or burnt. And actually, it's a really, really good starting material. And to be honest, you've got 150. J-Plas suggested there's probably about 150 tons a month available of that stuff if someone could do something with it. So myself and Matt had a think about this, and Matt came back with his expertise of thinking about how to turn that into a coating. So actually, there is some relatively novel chemistry that you can use to turn that into a PET alkyd coating, which is the sort of thing that was, you know, which has lots of potential. You can make it quite durable, and the fact that you know, you've got little bits of cap in there or different color doesn't matter, because once you've got it in a coating, that the use cases mean it's not terribly important, because it might be full of pigment or filler. So I think one of the things that the chemical industry is very keen to see is what might be seen as waste becoming someone else's product, and people actually thinking about what products they have and looking within the waste sectors of the different industries, and certainly within the other foundation industries. That's very important. So, you know, I've just mentioned pigments and fillers for plastics and composites. I think there's lots of opportunity there to mix thoughts across the different sectors. And I should say, this current technology with a PET alkyd coating, we're in discussion with a large company on how to exploit that. So in terms of that, that can be a case of an academic coming to a company and saying, what do you think? And I think that would be a very powerful way of generating TFI network projects. So do think about that as well. Okay, final slide. Okay, thank you very much. I think this TFI network is going to be great. I think there's great opportunity to work between sectors and work within sectors, and actually building those collaboration at all scales, I think will be very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justin. That was great. Any questions for Justin, please direct them to the chat, or you can private chat with them if you wish, but perhaps it's better to have them in the open chat to help everybody move on and understand things. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next speaker, who's going to be Laura Baker of the IMM3 Iron and Steel Society. She's going to be giving a talk as a Steel and the Network Plus, just to emphasize that the sector involved in the Network Plus is metals and not just steels. There's been some chat going around about that. We are definitely focusing on metals in the breadth, not steels in the specific. Thank you. When you're ready, Laura, if you go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep, we're good, Laura.
Okay. Hi, I'm very happy to be here today. Thanks. As Ian said, my name's Laura Baker. I work as Head of Product Management and Development for Tata Steel. But today I'm here representing the Institute of Materials, Minerals and Mining in my role as Chair of the Iron and Steel Group for that institute. Just a little bit about the Institute of Materials, Minerals and Mining. Fits really nicely with with the goals and the objectives of this this Network Plus, because our mission is to promote the science, design, engineering, and technology of materials, minerals, and mining, and their practical applications. And in doing that, we facilitate qualifications, professional recognition, and development, and deliver the knowledge and information and networking services to our membership. So really great opportunities to kind of further those links through this network. The Iron and Steel Group, as part of the Institute, supports those people working in the iron and steel industry and also in the related industries within the broader steel supply chain. And we provide a focus for exchange of knowledge on all aspects of steel production and processing. And we're represented on the board by all the major steel companies, as well as the academic and research institutions that support the institute, the industry. And there has been a bit of chat about steel versus metals, and I will focus on steel today, but I think what I'm going to say will apply across the whole metals industry. If you could move on for me now. This is an infographic that's been put together by UK Steel, and I think really nicely describes the industry. As we all know, steel provides the foundations on which an economy is built. It's the world's most recycled material and the second most used material in the world. And everything man-made is either made of steel or made with the aid of steel. So it's not really surprising that demand for steel in the UK continues to grow. We make around 7.3 million tonnes per year in the UK. Production is concentrated in two key regions shown by the red dots on the map there. The northeast of England, where British Steel and Liberty Steel have their facilities, and then Wales, where the majority of the Tata Steel operations are based. And then there's further processing operations, which are mainly concentrated around the steel production regions, but also exist in the sort of UK manufacturing hubs in the Midlands and the other key industrial heartlands. And crucially, and specifically to the sort of networking we're talking about today, our strategic research partners, who are shown in blue on that map, are located very close to the areas where the manufacturing happens, which enables us to have really close collaborations between academia and industry, and for a really good understanding of the industry to be built up by our research partners. In terms of its economic value, steel makes a significant contribution to the economy. Every tonne of steel that's made and used in the supply chain contributes about £900 to the economy. So annually, that equates to about 6.4 billion. And with around 33,000 people employed directly in the steel sector, and many, many more employed in the broader steel supply chain, it's obviously a key employer to the UK, and the jobs within the industry are really highly paid, typically 50% higher than the average in the regions in which they're based. So a really important sector for the manufacturing industry as a whole. From a sustainability point of view, steel's already got some pretty good sustainability credentials, although we may not recognise it straight away, but we use 45% less energy now than we did 50 years ago. To make a tonne of steel, and that steel we make is recycled in vast amounts. So I think on the graphic there it says 96% of the steel used in UK construction is either recycled or reused, which is a phenomenal amount. And of course, if we can drive local sourcing within the UK, there's huge amounts of CO2 that can be saved through reduced transport costs from imports. So massive opportunities for the steel industry within the UK. If you can move on for me, please, Neil. So, as I said, we're already some way along our sustainability journey. You could say steel's the original circular economy, as we've been recycling steel and energy within our processes for many, many years. But clearly, we can go further, and we need to go further. We need to reduce carbon in our process. We've already made some breakthroughs in the development of new carbon efficient iron and steel making processes. And we're also looking at how the steel industry can solve some of society's waste problems, either by increasing the use of steel scrap within production environments, or other carbon rich waste streams such as plastics, which could potentially be used as a feedstock for the steel making process. We use lots of energy, which is recognised. Most of it we recycle internally, but if we could do that more efficiently, we could potentially generate more energy than we need, and then potentially provide access to the community and act as an energy hub within the locations where we're based. But clearly there's customers at the end of this as well, so we need to help them become more sustainable. They need us to continue developing high quality, durable and lightweight steels so that they can meet the demands of us, the consumers. We obviously need to reduce emissions in transport, whether that's through electrification or lightweighting, and that again requires a whole new generation of steels that can deliver those requirements without compromising on safety, both for passengers and for pedestrians and other road users. Reducing waste in infrastructure is a key activity, and again we can help that by increasing the durability and life of the steels that are used in those environments. And to do that, they have to be able to withstand exposure to harsher and harsher environments for increasing lengths of time. And the hydrogen economy is going to bring more challenges to how the steels we design that help pipe hydrogen across the country. I guess we all need to think about how we use the planet's resources in a more sustainable way, and I think that the steel industry can be a real critical part of that, and help with the challenges set out in the industrial strategy. Can you move on for me, please, Neil? But we have to collaborate. It's the only way to do it. I mean, although we've done a lot to address the challenges we've talked about, we can't do it all on our own. The days of huge corporate R&D structures are simply gone, and we don't have the manpower or the knowledge to solve the problems on our own. We're extremely lucky, though, in the UK that we've got some incredibly talented steel-focused research groups at some of our best universities, and you can see some of them on the slide here. And they're already working on groundbreaking research that will drive the industry forward. And with government support, we're accelerating some of that work, as well as taking more risks in our thinking than we would be able to if we were trying to resolve these issues on our own. And that partnership's been there for many years and is getting stronger and stronger. UK steel companies are currently supporting over £200 million of active investment from UKRI. So really key research that's going on right now into the future of the steel industry. A great example of this is the SUSTAIN programme. This is a really exciting opportunity that should help galvanise all the key stakeholders in steel around a common goal, and that common goal is to develop a zero emission industry. It's a massive undertaking involving many partners that you can see there on the stream, but it has the potential to be really, really game changing and a step change in the way we make and use steel. If you can move on for me, please, Neil. So, I mean, in addition to the collaborations that we're doing within the industry, and as I said, there's a lot of those going on anyway, we've also started exploring opportunities with other sectors, which I guess is why we're here today. So there's been a number of cross-sector workshops I'm sure some of you have been involved in, including the one that was hosted by UK Steel last year. And there's some key areas which we've identified as potential for collaboration with other foundation industries. Clearly, fuel switching and waste heat recovery is of broad interest to a number of sectors and critical in reducing the energy we use for production and manufacture of all of our products. This industrial symbiosis concept is really interesting and really relevant to the steel industry and perhaps mineral products and cement. How do we use the waste of one industry and one process as the raw material for another? And there's plenty of opportunities in that area. End-of-life reprocessing, recycling, again, of interest to everyone. And of course, you can't forget digitization. Loads and loads of work going on in that area. And clearly lots more that can be done if we're to embrace Industry 4 and exploit it to all its benefits. If you could move on, please, Neil. So yeah, so some really exciting stuff going on in the industry. Lots of innovative work happening with our partners across the industry. I think we play a key role, along with the other foundation industries, in addressing societal challenges. and supporting the industrial strategy, but it has to be done with collaboration. And we really welcome the opportunity to engage with a wider cohort of academic and industrial collaborators via this network that we're kicking off today. So thanks very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Laura. That was a tremendous overview of the current state of the art in the steel industry. Thank you. If you want to direct any questions towards Laura specifically, please use the chat function. You can contact her privately if you wish as well. So moving on now to our next speaker. This is going to be Paul Bingham, Professor of Glass and Ceramics at from Sheffield Hallam University, our sister university in Sheffield. I hate to say that I used to play football with Paul Bingham about 30 years ago, and he's in better shape than I am currently, so he can probably still play. So he's going to give a talk on transforming the glass and ceramic industries, and I can see him, and he's ready to go, I believe.
Great. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak today, Ian. I'm just checking you can hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, great. Sorry, I didn't hear it. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a combination of the glass and the ceramics industries and give a few perspectives. And like every academic, I do teaching as well as research, so there will be one item of homework for all delegates. Next slide, please, Neil. Okay, so I'll give a very, very brief summary of the glass and ceramics industries. Laura gave a really nice summary of ceramics earlier, so I'll only briefly touch on that. A key message that I'd like to get across right from the start, and this is your homework, everybody, is that there is a wealth, or are a wealth, get your grammar right, Paul. There are a wealth of roadmaps out there, technology roadmaps, decarbonisation roadmaps, which have taken an awful lot of time and energy from an awful lot of people over the last about 10 to 15 years. So starting in no particular order, in 2015, Parsons Brinckerhoff and DNVGL undertook a series of decarbonisation roadmap activities for each of the foundation industries, and they're all available online. In addition to that, the individual foundation industries themselves have undertaken roadmaps. So the one in blue that says 2050, that's the British glass industry's 2050 decarbonisation roadmap. In addition to that, each sector undertook a roadmap action planning activity. I was involved in the ceramic sector, one of these. Again, these are all available online. So I would really strongly urge everybody on this call, if you have a spare 10, 20 minutes, just Google decarbonisation roadmaps. You will be amazed at the wealth of information that's freely available online. And what the messages that's, I hope, going to come through from my next few slides will be how much interconnectedness there is and how many of these roadmaps have ideas, themes, approaches that overlap. And we've already heard that through Justin's talk earlier about this idea of a Venn diagram, this overlapping of opportunities. Okay, next slide, please, Neil. So I'll start with the glass industry. So in the UK, we make about 3 million tons a year of glass. We chuck about 2.5 million tons of CO2 into the atmosphere, and we spend about 70 million quid on burning things, which is not really a very economically efficient way to go, as well as environmentally efficient. We've got a breakdown of about 1/3 of the UK glass sector is flat glass, owned by large multinationals. The container glass industry in the UK is about 2/3, and that's a combination of larger companies and smaller ones, and then a small number of fibre and specialty glass companies as well. So quite a diverse mix. Next slide, please. Within the British glass industries roadmap that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. I don't know if you can read that. It's very, very small. But to give a flavour of the kind of approaches that the British glass industry has previously identified, it includes things like process changes, energy efficiency measures, raw materials, pelletization, consolidation, furnace improvements, electric heating, and so on. And those themes come through time and time again when looking across the roadmaps from the different foundation industries. You're all basically saying the same thing, and that's a really important message. Next slide, please, Neil. The ceramics industry, Laura has already talked about this, so I won't dwell on this other than to say it's arguably more diverse than the glass industry in terms of the range of products, the range of raw materials that are used, and also the diversity of companies. There are many, many SMEs working in the UK ceramics industry, whereas the UK glass industry tends to be, on average, larger companies than ceramics. So there's a difference there that we do need to take into account. Next slide, please, Neil. Okay, I mentioned roadmaps. There are many that I could have chosen from. The reason I picked this one is it's got a lovely diagram that everybody hopefully can read it. But this is a EU ceramics industries roadmap from about 8 or 9 years ago. And they set out a series of technologies and options for reducing environmental emissions, but also the kind of timescales that will be needed in order to develop and deploy technologies. And so they set this out in terms of short-term wins, things like raw materials optimization, combined heat and power, and then longer-term things like CCS, alternative fuels. So when implementing those roadmaps and developing the technologies behind them, which we hope this Network Plus will contribute towards, those timescales obviously will play a role as well. Next slide, please, Neil. A different paper from the European European ceramic industry from about 2014 sets out some of the opportunities for decarbonisation from a refractories industry perspective. So this is only one small part of the ceramics industry, but I'm not going to read all of those out. But again, hopefully you can see these common themes that are coming through time and time again around raw materials, around process, around recycling, reformulation, around it, the way that we produce the energy. Next slide, please. And again, yet another publication, again from about 7 or 8 years ago, and I've highlighted in green, yellow, and blue those kind of thematic areas around different strands of materials in terms of the synthesis, preparation, processing, and so on. So it's those synergies that pull those threads together across the foundation industries. And our last speaker again talked about waste from the steelmaking industry potentially being used in the cement industry. And I think one thing I'd like to see from this Network Plus is a lot of that kind of thing going on, because there are so many good opportunities there. Next slide, please, Neil. Okay, I'm going to whiz over this. I'm very conscious of time, but a few examples from my group's research and development that illustrate the kind of thing we've done in this arena before, and hopefully others will take something from this. First example is briquetting of glass fines. So about 20% of all recycled glass gets binned. It's too small, fine particles. They can't put it easily back into a glass furnace. But by making it into these briquettes in this image, they can be successfully reintroduced into a glass furnace and thereby save considerable amounts of energy. And one of our industrial partners, Ardar, has recently swept the board in national and European awards for this technology. A separate program we've been looking at is taking byproducts from well-known processes. There's a very large power station very near Sheffield that many of you will have heard of, shares named with a Bond villain, that produces an awful lot of byproduct. And using that byproduct, for example, to make glass, as we've done here, you can see that we've been able to introduce considerable amounts of it as a potential alternative raw material. Again, saving energy and CO2, enhancing circular economy and recycling approaches. Next, please, Neil. On the ceramics front, we've been involved in development of new products as well. So it's not just about recycling and reuse of byproducts, but it's also new products that can help save energy. And here's one example from some work we've been involved in with Morgan Advanced Materials, and that's led to the product launch of a brand new low biopersistence high temperature fiber insulation, which could potentially be used in a wide range of energy intensive industrial applications. This stuff is low biopersistence, which means that it breaks down within the human body, and it's not carcinogenic in any way, unlike some other products can be. Next slide, please, Neil. Okay, so again, I'm not going to read all of that out, except the last message. It's really important that we focus on materials, processes, technologies, approaches that have a good chance of actually being used in the real world by our foundation industries. And the Network Plus is crucial to helping facilitate that by building those links, by making those connections. And I 100% support the Network Plus in what it's trying to achieve. I think it's a great, great thing. Do your homework, read your roadmaps, and if we could just pop over to the next slide, please, Neil. Thanks to everybody listed there, and then the final slide, I'll leave you with a few things, a few references in case anybody wants to look at those. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, that was a very good overview, and thank you for giving us a nice prelude to our first workshop, which will be essentially what you've been saying here is to look at the existing roadmaps for the individual sectors and come up with commonalities and establish those as the way forward for how we approach the Network Plus. So we will be dealing with the roadmaps and looking at them in the next few months and creating a common path forward with the foundation industries. With your help, of course. It's all about involving the stakeholders, the foundation industries companies, the RTOs, the NGOs, etc. So the next speaker is Nina Cardinal from Hansen Cement, who's going to give us an overview of the carbon challenge for the cement industry. Are you okay, Nina?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm Nina Cardinal. I'm the National Technical Manager for Hansen Cement. Hansen Cement being one of the 5 national cement companies in the UK, and we are also the largest producer of GGBS, ground granulated blast furnace slag, in the UK, which is of relevance, as you will see later in this presentation, and also about working across industries. Hansen Cement are part of Heidelberg Cement, a global cement company which is headquartered in Germany and where most of our research is carried out. When throughout this presentation I talk about we, that's sometimes Hansen, sometimes Heidelberg Cement, and sometimes the cement industry. I hope it will be clear which one I'm talking about. Next slide, please. 3 parts to my presentation. I will first go through the main challenges, then talk about the targets, plans, and actions which are already in place, and I will finish with one last slide about what I perceive the needs of our industry are in the context of this collaborative research. Next slide, please. Talking about the challenges, next slide, please. Our main challenge is the CO2 challenge, and it comes from really a law of physics. We heat calcium carbonate to make lime, and by this we give off CO2, and it's something we cannot change. We need the lime to make the clinker for the cement. And while doing this, we heat our kilns to about 1400 degrees, so there are further CO2 emissions. They split about 2/3 for the process emissions, the calcination, and about 1/3 for the fuel CO2 emissions from the fuel. Next slide, please. Related to this are other challenges, and that is what I want to explain on this slide here. Why do GGBS and fly ash matter in this context? If you look on the graph on the left-hand side, on the y-axis, you have the CO2 emissions associated with producing clinker and GGBS. Clinker here being shown, our cement being shown as the blue graphs, and GGBS region is our brand for it, the green chart. The process emissions for GGBS are 0 because it is a byproduct of the steel industry. We do need some electricity for both processes, that is for grinding the clinker and for grinding the granulate to make GGBS. We need fossil fuels, significant amount of fossil fuels to heat our kilns, and we need some fuel, a small amount, to dry the granulate before grinding it. Only in respect of transport does GGBS attract more CO2 than the clinker. That is, and here's the challenge, because already now we don't have enough granulate available in the UK for the demand of GGBS in the UK. And why does this matter so much? If you look at the table on the right-hand side, which are average figures of embodied CO2 for the UK as published by the Mineral Products Association, Portland cement on average has 860 kilograms per ton of cement of embodied CO2. That reduces to just 80 for GGBS, and at the bottom for fly ash, it's only 0.1%. So, sorry, 0.1 kilogram per ton. Next slide, please. Apologies to Laura, who probably would have had a better graph. That was the only one I could find on the internet. The graph shows the amount of pigment produced in the United Kingdom between 2009 and 2018. As you can see, there has been a peak in 2014, and it has since been decreasing. I assume it will have also decreased, or at least not increased, during 2019 and 2020. This is a source of our raw material for making GGBS, which you can see on the right-hand side. That is the grey material, and at the bottom, that is slag being quenched to make sure that it is amorphous, so that we can use it in the cement industry for ground granulated blast furnace slag. So the challenge here is a material which is low in CO2. It's not enough available any longer in the UK. Next slide, please. A very similar picture for fly ash, which is another secondary supplementary cementitious material used in cements and in concrete. You can see the material shown on an SEM picture on the left-hand side. Fly ash, we have used it in the industry for many years as a byproduct of a power generation from coal. On this graph, on the x-axis, you see the days of the year from January to December, and on the y-axis, the years from 2012 down to 2020. In 2012, in the winter months, on either side of the summer, you still have some very dark black spots. That is when 50% of the electricity in the UK was still generated from coal, and accordingly, fresh fly ash being produced. If you go to 2020, remember our first lockdown, the fantastic spring weather we had, you see there are months where everything is green, where no coal power station was fired, and therefore also no fresh fly ash being produced. So just like GGBS, fly ash is also short in supply, and you remember how low the embodied carbon for fly ash was. Next slide, please. Moving on to the second part about the targets, plans and actions which are in place in the industry or in our company. Referring back to what Paul just said, yet another roadmap here. That is the roadmap which the MPA, the Mineral Products Association, has published last year on behalf of the concrete and cement industry in the UK, the roadmap to beyond net zero carbon. There's three categories which we are focusing on. The direct emissions, such as where we can influence them through fuel switching, carbon capture, usage and storage, using different low carbon cements, and transport, again, which was already mentioned several times before. The indirect emissions is the electricity which we use, how it is being generated, and then there are also reductions available from the supply chain. Next slide, please. Again, part of this roadmap also is putting some figures to this. Very similar picture as shown from other associations before. If you look at the two grey bars, the second grey bar is 2018, the baseline for the roadmap. If we set this as 100% of CO2 emissions, if we then go back to the left-hand side, the second grey bar, the higher one is 1990, where you can see we have more than half the CO2 emissions between 1990 and 2018 as an industry. And then going to the right, how can we now reduce to net zero carbon? The 4% there are the indirect emissions planned to come from electricity, different sources of electricity. The 7% is a reduction in emissions from transport. A lot is still transported in tankers on road. There's still a lot of scope to move to rail transport in our industry. And this 12% emissions come from using more low carbon cements, and I will say a little bit more on the next slide. And then further 16% reductions from fuel switching, such as moving more to fresh biofuel or also hydrogen. And then a huge reliance in the plan on carbon capture and storage at 61%. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Niels.
Yes, I can see the next slide. It's the
okay, it's again same glitch as before. So I try to speak. Unfortunately, I've got the other one in front of me. I try to speak with. You should be seeing some examples of developments now in front of you. So, for example, with regards to fuels used in cement production, we already use now 43% of refuse-derived energy. This does not necessarily reduce CO2 reductions, but it contributes dramatically to reducing material going to landfill. We also use waste biomass already by 17% of our thermal input for making cements. But again, an issue here that is also increasingly short in supply. And another example, which is an ongoing development, is, for example, the current UK fuel switching project, which is government funded through the switching competition, where we are looking at firing one of our kilns on a trial basis with a zero carbon fuel mix. That our kiln at Ribblesdale, hopefully going ahead this summer with 70% biomass, 20% hydrogen and 10% plasma. And we're working there together with Tarmac, who are also looking at plasma technology for their burners at their Stansted plant. Moving down, sorry, not this slide here, please stay on this slide. Other examples which are hugely important for the roadmap, as you've seen before, is carbon capture. The lovely picture on your right is one of Heidelberg cement plant in Norway, the Brevik plant. It is the first plant, industrial scale carbon capture technology associated with the cement plant. Planning has gone ahead, finance is in place, and it's due to be operational by 2025 and due to capture 400,000 tons of CO2 per annum to go into old oil wells in the sea outside of Norway. And another carbon capture project with a different technology is also going into the pilot stage at one of Heidelberg's cement plants in Germany, at the Hanover plant. That is an extension of the Horizon 2020 LILAC project, the phase 2, with 25 million investment from the European Union, and that will have a capacity of storing 100,000 tons of CO2 per year. And then a final element was in the roadmap was, for example, the lower carbon cements, where I want to give an example from the UK, where at MPA level, the cement industry has collaborated to develop multi-component cements, which include limestone, confirming the durability properties of the cements and driving those into EN and UK standards. On the right-hand side, you see a snippet of the part 5 of the cement standard, the European cement standard, which we all hope will be published this summer and eventually be translated into the ready-mix concrete standard in the UK, so that we can use those cements in the UK with confidence. Next slide, please. To finish, just some thoughts about the network and collaboration. Most of this has already been said, but I think in particular in our industry, it is very important that we have an open mind for innovation. We often very much live in the here and now. Most of us in our industry haven't got large research centers in the UK and are therefore very much production focused. So we need to be open for innovations which come from you out of academia. Collaboration has been mentioned often enough now, and therefore I move on to what I believe is hugely important, research with impact. I think coordination is really needed to avoid repetition, and I was really pleased to see that, for example, the new Transfire Hope advertised this event to see how different networks and can work together. We do need the cross-industry collaboration where it does make sense, but sometimes I also believe there can be hugely important projects within one industry as well, which we should not neglect. We also need to consolidate past research. When I think about how much research has been carried out, for example, of the suitability of glass as a secondary cementitious material, or also even electric arc furnace slats, none of those have made their way into standards yet, which leads me to the next bullet point. Translating research into industry standards is hugely important, otherwise we can't take advantage of it. And I think from the carbon challenge, it is clear that we need to act really in the here and now. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Nina. That was a fantastic overview. Bruce, you have a comment?
Sorry, I just clicked the wrong button.
That's okay. It happens, Bruce. It does. Yeah. Well, since you're there, Bruce, it's you're going to be given the next talk. Just to remind people to please sign up to the Network Plus. All this, we're going to have a news page to keep up to date with events. We're going to have a repository of all the roadmaps. There's all kinds of things that are going to be there eventually. The current version of the website is the basic. We've only just begun. So, but please remember that we are going to grow and grow and grow, and everything's going to be improved within our web page. It's a place to sign up, to get started, and to become a member of the network. Bruce, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Ian. I'll try to very briefly summarise what I think we've heard this afternoon. And you'll be pleased to know I'm going to try and do that in one slide. I think this afternoon's speakers have really re-emphasised why the Transforming Foundation Industry Challenge as a whole needed to come into existence. And then within that, how the establishment of the Network Plus is going to be an absolutely integral part of achieving our vision for the challenge as a whole. So Neil, if I could have the next slide, please. So just as a very brief reminder, as I'm sure many of you on the call are aware of the details in terms of the challenge, but for those who are not, the wider challenge, what we're going to do is enact a series of targeted interventions that are really designed to significantly increase the foundation industry ecosystem and the number of projects flowing through that ecosystem at all levels within the system. And we're particularly targeting those barriers where it's going to take the combined efforts across the sectors through all the different people working at different TRL levels, right from the research base, virtually through to deployment on plan, to be able to overcome those barriers. And the Network Plus, as you'll see from the diagram, really sits at the heart of what is the sector strategy work stream for the challenge. And alongside the Technology Transfer Hub, which all being well will be in place within a few short weeks, and the pilot facilities we've been able to provide to extend the capability in terms of pilot facilities across the foundation industry sectors, are there to provide more capability and more capacity. And I really hope capability and capacity that's going to grow from the likes of today and outlive this challenge. You know, we've seen there's a huge challenge. It isn't just going to take the next 3 to 4 years of the life of the TFI challenge. It's going to take a lot longer than that. We have a lot to deliver, but we've also got an awful lot to get started in the next three to 4 years. So in the short term, I and my team will be working with Ian and his team, the team that comes into existence at the Hub, and with our colleagues at KTN and all our colleagues across all the different sectors, in terms of delivering innovation support and avenues for you all to progress these really key innovations that are needed. And I stress the key ones. You know, in the end, resources are limited. We've got to target the priority ones, going all the way back to what Laura said nearly an hour and a half ago now. We've got to identify the key innovations and get them flowing through this innovation pipeline. So I'm not going to say any more because time is overrun, but I'll be around for questions and hope to talk to many of you as the days and weeks and months move on in terms of the network.
Thank you very much, Bruce, for that overview. And I absolutely reaffirm what Bruce has said about collaborations across the board, but obviously with the new hub coming online soon, It is very much the purpose to act synergistically with the hub and create a way forward together. So this is already a little bit happening, but I can't say any more than that. Okay, so yeah, there's the I'm just trying to read here what I've got. I think it's coming up in front of it. Okay, so dates for the diary. Okay, we mentioned roadmaps a lot. They came up in huge numbers in the discussions, and absolutely it's critical. And it's critical that we find the commonalities, as Paul particularly mentioned, as Laura suggested, as Nina suggested as well. There are clear and obvious commonalities there, and we need to pick those out and make those the basis of what we do within the TFI Network Plus in the future. So that's April 19th, so put that date in your diary. We'll confirm the how that's going to be run in the fullness of time as we come up with the agenda for that workshop. To be confirmed, Spring 21, it's probably going to be late April after the road mapping workshop, which is what we're going to be doing first. We're going to have our first call. Please, if there's any early career researchers out there, we encourage you to apply to these calls. We're in discussion as to what that call should be at the moment because of some of the restrictions on laboratory access through CV19. We may have front load the calls to be desk-based research to avoid issues with non-delivery based on CV19. We are waiting on that a little bit, and we will get you that information as soon as we possibly can. There is a joint ACES Network Plus meeting, which I am organising in two capacities, as the chair of the UK chapter for the American Ceramic Society, and also as the PI of the Network Plus. So we are going to organise a joint meeting. This is a goal of what we want to achieve with the Network Plus, which is to have joint meetings with the appropriate organisations and hubs and everything where possible. So that's going to be on the 6th of July, and please watch out for that in the various outlets, media outlets. And again, please sign up to the Network Plus webpage. It's going to be our major distribution, our major place to distribute information about the Network Plus, forthcoming events, news items, good news stories about successful mini projects, and so on. We have a network. We have a web page live, which is a fairly basic one at the moment, but it's going to grow and grow as it gets adapted to the needs of the members. And I'll repeat once again, at the risk of getting kind of nagging, it's about you guys, not about us. We are here to facilitate your needs as much as we possibly can within the Network Plus, and link to the various organisations that have been put in place by the government-funded bodies.